Hey friends, you're watching BrainStorm Acres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
In real life, it's getting cold here. It's going to be down in the teens.
Yeah.
The early part of this coming week. That's one of the reasons why I started installing this Chinese diesel heater in the greenhouse. Unfortunately, I didn't get it put all together and working correctly before we had a cold snap, so we froze the tomatoes. We live off-grid on 43 acres in northern Arizona in the high desert. It's about 60 miles to the Grand Canyon. We get 4 seasons, more or less. We do get snow in the winter. We get some hot in the summer, maybe more hot than we'd like. But we've lived here for 17 years full-time on our property. The village back here has flocked snow for the background. And we're going to have, maybe tonight, some snow.
Yeah, the forecast it seems to change every 15 minutes.
It does change every 15 minutes.
Initially, the forecast was, it was supposed to be windy on Saturday, and then the storm was supposed to hit us on Sunday, and we were supposed to get rain because it was too warm. Well, no, first it was going to be snow. Then it switched to rain because it was going to be too warm. Now it switched to the wind is hitting us today, which it did. It kicked in a half an hour before they said it would get here. They said it would get here at 11. It got here at about
10:30, quarter past 10.
Quarter past 10, I think. And it's really blowing. I chatted with our daughter in California. She said some of the areas where she is, which is not too far from the coast, in mid coast California, some areas have had 3.5 inches of rain. They're trying to find out what their local rainfall is because it's really come down hard. Rain is super hard, then it switched to hail, and it was hitting the house hard enough that one of the windows was leaking. That's how you do the ultimate test of your house, is when you have weather come from a direction that it never comes from. When one of the last place we rented in California, we lived there for a couple of years, and it never leaked anywhere, you know.
And then it leaked.
Oh, we got an El Nino, which is when California really totally gets clobbered.
And it had a ton of rain.
Right. And it was coming from a direction where the rain never came from. And all of a sudden, I went to take some clean folded laundry into my daughter's bedroom, and the water was coming through the top of the doorway like literally like a waterfall through there.
This is not good.
Oh, okay. and I tossed the laundry someplace dry. And I'll never forget standing there and looking at this sheet of water between me and my daughter's room, and I'm like, okay, we have a leak.
In real life, it's getting cold here. It's going to be down in the teens.
Yeah.
The early part of this coming week. That's one of the reasons why I started installing this Chinese diesel heater in the greenhouse. Unfortunately, I didn't get it put all together and working correctly before we had a cold snap, so we froze the tomatoes. That happened. We didn't lose a lot of tomatoes.
No, I had pulled most of the tomatoes that were even thinking about turning green. We still have a few tomatoes left in the kitchen. Not many. It's probably time to... I sorted some of them the other day and tossed a couple. Kind of done, feel like we're done with summer, you know, so there's not a huge urge to eat tomatoes. I'm waiting to start the next set of vegetables because right now the daylight length is too short.
And we're going to be going for a business trip in February, so we need to time things. Something that's going to be done in 45 days is going to be fine. Something that's going to be done in 60 days, 70 days, if we started it today, probably wouldn't be real good because we wouldn't be here to harvest it.
Well, it depends on what it is, too. For instance, kohlrabi.
That would be fine.
You can plant and let it sit, and it will just stay. And you obviously don't want it to dry out, but other than that, it's going to be pretty good by itself. It doesn't do much. It'll just sit there, and it'll also hold for a minimum of 2 weeks in the refrigerator. So if I was really concerned about whether it was going to hold or not, I could harvest it right before I left. Things that you want to be a little bit more cautious about is when are you going to be harvesting greens, things like lettuce, spinach, that sort of stuff. Cabbage, that's going to take a long time, depending on what kind I grow. They can range in length anywhere from like 55 or 60 days up to about 100 and something days.
But they still hold pretty well.
But they hold
in the
really
cold.
well. They hold really well in the cold. They're not going to care.
And besides, the days are short, so they're not going to grow all that fast to begin with.
No. When it gets touchier is in the spring when it's starting to warm up, and you have to be careful how much water you get on them. The heads can split, and they're still good eating. They're just not pretty anymore. But you have to be careful; they won't hold as well. They will spoil faster.
Yeah. So I want to address a specific question from a viewer that said that they were considering putting in a Chinese diesel heater to heat something. And the question was getting an all-in-one unit, that is something that's all built and you just run a hose to where you want to heat the room up, or buy one like I did, which is split apart. What I'll say is, like anything that's involving fire and heat in your house, you need to make sure that you know what you are doing. And by what I mean by saying you need to make sure you know what you're doing, it's electrical, it's heat, it's exhaust, it's fuel source. All of those things you need to be comfortable doing, and you need to be able to really follow the non-instructions.
Right.
Well, it helps a lot if you've installed this kind of product before. I've installed many different kinds of heaters in the last 20 years. Longer than that, in fact, but the last 20 years in RVs, here in our home, in the greenhouse, in the utility building, every place. So
Studio.
we've installed a lot of different pieces of heating equipment. One of the cautions that I'll give you is that in many locations you have to be a licensed plumber to plumb propane. You have to be a licensed electrician to wire it up.
Or you have to have one come in and inspect at least.
You need to have the right kind of licenses, because your insurance will not cover a problem if it occurs if you've done the installation yourself. Well, it may not cover the problem.
Well, the thing is, if you were to say you bought this happens all the time in colder climates. Somebody buys an electric heater and they bring it into their house. It's supposed to be run inside a house. It's safe. It's not going to put out CO2 or carbon monoxide or any other thing. It'll just say something like, don't put next to flammable stuff. And
don't put it on an extension cord.
And don't put it on an extension cord, which is another thing that people tend to ignore. Those rules are there for a reason, because a lot of times if anything's going to fail, we've lost a freezer once in our lifetime because of an extension cord that went bad. We didn't lose much in it, but it was still darn annoying at the time, and we thought that it was the freezer, and it wasn't. It was the stupid extension cord. And we know somebody else who had the same things happen, where it was an extension cord or something got unplugged, or that sort of thing. The insurance company never wants to pay. If there's
Well, they're not in the business of
paying. No, they're in the business of making money. They are there for their stockholders or their family that owns them, depending on who owns what. And it is their job to say no, and because they have to maximize that profit. So they're all going to do the same thing. They're going to take a look at the situation. You'll have if there's a fire in most areas, you'll have a fire inspector come in to determine whether it was arson or an electrical failure. I mean, electricity could fail. I mean, in older homes that are wired with aluminum wire,
especially with aluminum, because a lot of people don't take the right precautions to wire aluminum and copper together. That's the problem, is when you have those dissimilar metals, if you don't have the right compound between them, you're going to have a problem eventually. And a lot of these houses, we lived in a house in Massachusetts that was built in the 50s, and it had aluminum wire throughout. And when we had the fuse box replaced with a breaker box.
Right, because
that
they were
was
the
a
most
challenge.
expensive, stupid fuses that they sold at the hardware store, and they were hard to get. You know, we saw somebody burn their place down earlier this year, here. And it was something that most people wouldn't think about. He was working on plugging some leaks, some air leaks.
In a trailer.
In a trailer, and he was spraying the spray foam to do the plugs, which does a great job. However, he had a live pilot on a hot water heater.
And the propellant in the installation that he was using
Flashed over.
was flammable.
Yep, flashed over. Lit the whole underside of the trailer. It was gone.
No time.
No time. They had time to get them and the animals out, and that was it.
We actually happened to see the fire start from our property. It was about a mile and a half away. We got in the car to go see if we could be of any help, because a fire out here is not a good thing.
No, and it takes a long time to get response. Sometimes they won't come out.
And we got down there in less than 10 minutes. And by the time we got there, it was a pile of smoking.
Yeah, there were
metal.
some of the closer neighbors had gotten there sooner, and it was just, basically it was the frame of the metal. That was it.
So yeah, you can install one of these Chinese diesel heaters. One of the things to understand is that all of these Chinese diesel heaters are copies of older German products. So the quote brand new Chinese diesel heaters that you can buy today were a revision ago of the German heaters. So they don't have all the newest bells and whistles. They don't have all of the new safety features, if there are any. So you are working with something that's a little bit older. Some of these heaters come with a CE mark, which is good for Europe. Some of them don't. I have two heaters. One has the CE mark. The other doesn't have the CE mark. They came from the exact same supplier.
Right.
They're exact same product. The difference is one has the mark and the other one doesn't.
Right. Personally, if I was going to install something in my house, we have a pellet stove that we have that is our secondary heat for the house. And
Well, that's our primary backup heat.
our primary backup heat when solar fails. Yeah. And it was originally supposed to be the secondary because we had another system which failed years ago, and we haven't
It's
re-upped
not
it.
so much that it failed. It's
The pump failed.
the pump is not working correctly. But
No.
really the issue then is the amount of propane you have to run through the hot water heater boiler to heat the hydronic flooring is way too much.
So we installed that per instructions, and the guy who was the local fire chief at the time came out and looked at it to make sure that it met all the rules, and it did. So we got the check off from the fire chief, and that's all you need. Some places it depends on what the rules are where you live, but you need to be aware that there are rules, and if you break them and you burn your house down, the insurance company is not going to be sympathetic, and they may refuse to cover the damage. So I would be highly skeptical of using something like a Chinese diesel heater that was only intended for use in outbuildings and pieces of heavy equipment and vans and RVs and stuff like that in my permanent residence.
So there are a lot of people in Europe, especially the UK, that use these diesel heaters in their workshops and in fact in their cars, their vans, their trailers, and even in their home. There's some discussion about whether or not that's a good idea, but that's not for us to decide.
That's their choice.
There's good reasons why people are doing it now. It's a lot cheaper to heat with
Yeah.
diesel heater in a small space than their alternatives. So that's one of the reasons why I was putting in this diesel heater in the greenhouse, is because it's less expensive to run than a propane
Yeah,
heater.
if we weren't looking at costs, we could have gotten a professional, made in the USA, UL, this, that, the other thing, all the bells and whistles and stamps and signs of approval from every organization out there, OSHA approved, blah, 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 for $1,000, not a problem.
Well, more.
We just didn't want to spend that money. So you spent the time, it said.
It's time or money.
Yeah, and that's always the thing. I remember years ago a friend saying that sometimes if you have it, the best thing to do is throw money at a project.
Now, in this case, I've installed one. I now know what the problems are with it. I now have instructions for operating the controller, which was the big problem that I had, besides the fact that the fuel pump was locked up. So installing the second one will be a lot faster, a lot easier, a lot less complication. That will be an interesting opportunity. But to go back and answer the question, if you don't have good skills, buy the unit that's all put together. Don't do something that you have to fit separately because it requires some skills. If you buy something that is an all-in-one unit, that is known to work together and has the right marks on it, the right regulatory marks, which you may be able to find, that's the ticket.
Well, we know that there's more expensive models of these that are not Chinese made, or they're made in China, but they're QA'd by an American or European country.
Mostly a German company.
They're more expensive.
A lot more expensive, about $1,400.
Right, but reliable, guaranteed, CE, IL, UL, whatever the heck all the different letters are. I mean, all that sort of stuff. All the approval organizations have looked at it and said, yes, we give you our stamp of approval. Good housekeeping says this is okay to use. So they just tell you that it has passed the rules of being safe. Now, if you install it incorrectly, you can negate all that.
And that's the reason to buy an all-in-one unit, because now you're down to making one plumbing connection, that is the hot air duct to go into whatever building you're trying to heat.
Right.
It means you don't have as much of a problem when it comes to exhaust getting into the building, all those kinds of things. But again, if you don't have the skills at hand to do this job, find a different way. If you're down to no other alternative, find a friend who can help. Find a friend who's knowledgeable who can help.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know some people that I wouldn't ask for help.
Install a carbon monoxide detector because it's a lot safer to be safe than to be not safe.
We have, even when you have everything plumbed correctly and everything, because a lot of modern houses are so tight, you can still, and if you're cooking with propane, you can still, or natural gas, you can still build up more carbon monoxide in the house than you would prefer.
Do you know what time it is?
Yes, it's time to tell everybody that they should like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because, we grow all kinds of things here, we do all kinds of things here, but
I break all kinds of things
He breaks all kinds of things here. I don't usually break all kinds of things here, but sometimes I do. But we're still trying to grow, and the only way we can grow is if people subscribe to the channel and share our information with friends. Like-minded friends are always more than welcome. We'll even answer their questions if they ask smart ones.
We'll even answer if they're not smart questions.
So be sure to come back because obviously we have more Christmas stuff. We have all kinds of stuff going on, and I need to get back to work actually. So
we both need to get back to work.
Yeah.
There's hoses I need to coil up. I have a bunch of...
Yeah, we have snow tonight. So it's not going to be a lot. They're telling us an inch.
I have a bunch of buckets to move into the greenhouse so that they don't freeze. So we'll talk with you later.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. Don't forget to brainstorm.
Yeah, because obviously we do.
Thanks, Steve.
That was fun, Steve.